Welcome to KidLit Catalyst. Today's guests are Susan Blackaby and Meredith Mundy.
Meredith knew that I wrote, they would give you a little rubric that was pretty strict and you had to come up with something creative in that little square. And so she knew I could do that and sent me a little pencil drawing of the groundhog holding a teacup and said, "Can you write a story for this?"
That's right. I totally forgot that's how this started. It was in Carmen Segovia's.
Wow.
It was in Carmen Segovia's portfolio. I fell in love with this little character, and I just thought, Suze, if anybody could do it, you could create a story around this little character. And I loved your manuscript immediately.
Well, we're so happy to have you both join us for KidLit Catalyst today and help people get out of the wilderness of trying to puzzle the publishing industry and how to be creative. And so we're so happy you're here today.
Oh, thank you so much for having us.
Meredith Mundy is the editor-director of Abrams Appleseed and Abrams preschool program as well. She's been editing books for young readers for more than 25 years and hopes to continue doing so for at least 25 more. She definitely looks like, I don't believe the 25 years part by looking at her, but I think she's got a 25 more strong years ahead of her. She started her career at Random House as an editorial assistant and keeper of the June B. Jones Bible. She then worked for 11 years at Dutton Children's Books and for 13 years at Sterling's Children's Books. She joined Abrams in 2018 and has been busily acquiring new projects for her target audience, which is 0 to 5 ever since. Meredith is looking specifically for underrepresented authors and illustrators with ideas for original and unusual board books and novelty books centered around a strong concept or holiday hook. She's also seeking very young picture books with minimal word counts, but plenty of humor and heart. I'm excited to hear more about what she's looking for and her experience. That's amazing, Meredith. And Susan Blackaby, AKA Suze, to anyone that knows her, worked in educational publishing for over 40 years and has written hundreds of titles for the K through 8 audience. Her own picture book projects include Rembrandt's Hat, named one of the top 10 kids books in 2002 by the Washington Post. That's big, Suze. And also Brownie Groundhog and the February Fox. That's a beautiful book. And Brownie Groundhog and the Wintry Surprise, try saying that 3 times fast, and Leo's Gift. Her nonfiction titles include Cleopatra and Egypt's Last and Greatest Queen, and 12 Days of Christmas in Oregon, and Simone Biles making the case for the greatest of all time. So timely. And Ness, Nook, and Cranny, winner of the 2011 Lion and the Unicorn Award for Excellence in North American Poetry. Beautiful book. Her poetry has also been featured in the Poetry Friday and Anthology for Science, the Poetry Friday Anthology for Celebrations, Hop to It, Poems to Get You Moving, and Poems Are Teachers, and the Poetry of Us. What a delight to have you two with us. We are in for a treat today with Meredith and Suze. Welcome, ladies.
What a lovely introduction. Thanks so much.
What's really fun is that these two have worked together quite a bit. And I always loved hearing all the behind the scenes stuff from Suze. And yeah, you know, and Meredith, all that experience you have going from place to place. You know, I remember sitting in your Dutton office, and that was right after 9/11. So that was that same time. Yeah, Suze and everybody, we were all there that year. That was fun. Wow.
This makes me think of a question that's not a usual question on this gathering, and that is, right now people are thinking of having a lot of changes and a lot of shifts in their life. It's like more than normal, it feels like to me. So you've taken on some really big shifts in an industry where that could be a risk, in my interpretation, and done successfully all along the way. Do you have any insight for people about making decisions about new decisions and following your path? Because you have clearly done that very well.
Well, in terms of shifting from place to place, you know, often that's not your choice. You know, I always tell young editors when they come into this business that publishing changes constantly. There's a lot of turnover. There's a lot of shifting of leaders. One president will come in and a bunch of people will go out. So that happened to me twice. I was laid off twice and was able to find new jobs right away. Luckily, I think the main thing was the mentors that I had were so generous with their own time and connections and willing to make calls for the young assistants who had been let go or whatever the situation was. So, I think in publishing, it's such a tiny world, and we have to be willing to help each other and to reach out beyond the publishing walls to find new voices and new developers of content. So we're all trying to do that. And I'm so grateful for the mentors I've had and the people who are willing to help me in my career. But certainly for those who are making changes, now is the time to do it. I mean, if we have ever had a moment in our history when a big shift can happen in your life, all of a sudden I'm able to work from home. That was never a possibility, even though I had a very long commute. If you've been aching to write a book, don't wait. Start now.
Love it.
Is she talking to you, Celeste?
I think she's talking to a lot of people right now.
All of us.
Yeah, there's just so yay. Well, let's put that in a crystal capsule and chain it a couple times.
Yeah.
Now is the time. Suze, do you have anything you would add to that?
I think that it is interesting that we've been kind of off balance and on our back foot for quite a while now and seem to be functioning pretty well. And so I think any kind of risk doesn't seem that nutty. You can get by with little. And I think too that in tightening our circles, we have a better support system now built in that's more mindful and more thoughtful. Is my experience. So
that's such a great way to look at it. Yeah, how that constriction has made those connections we do have more valuable.
Yeah, and I think that people
Interesting.
have made a point of reaching out and staying connected. So, and that those connections are stronger.
Yeah, I definitely feel that too. I'm curious for both of you. I'll start with you, Suze. How has creativity helped you navigate this time and helped you kind of weather all these changes and shifts in direction and ups and downs?
Well, I came into this having lots of ups and downs already. So I was all, and I would, there's days when I would prefer to hang out with my people in my novel that, it may never get done, but they're interesting. They don't bother me and they're not demanding except for my time. And you can, it's been handy to be able to create your own little universe while you're hanging out. And at the very beginning of the pandemic, my daughter's then boyfriend showed up and asked to do he was working on a screenplay and wanted to do a writing retreat and ended up staying 5 months and then getting married.
Impressive.
But it was interesting that his first reach out was the creative piece, and that I said he was about to leave, and then I said, well, you're welcome to stay. And then Rudy came in from Africa. So my daughter came home from Africa, so we all were here, but he and I worked on writing regularly all through that time. So still we're having our little meet up and how are you doing? And he was really obnoxious because his closet doors filled up with Post-its. And I was like, what are you doing? Said, I can't have coffee right now, but I'll come. And I thought, what do you mean? So he was working really hard. And I was kind of poking along. But
the power of Post-its. I think that's a real
very
thing.
seriously that we were going to write in the morning and then talk at 11. And yeah, wow.
Nice.
That's great. Yeah.
That's a creative way to check out family, huh?
Yeah.
Go move in. Wow.
Well, Deb mentioned that you worked together and collaborated. How did you find each other to do that or choose to do that collaboration?
Oh, Meredith and Suze, yeah.
Oh, you mean the two of us?
Yeah.
Oh, let's see. Well, definitely we met at Silver Falls, and you're an example that I often think of when people ask me about how I found various authors to work with, because I don't think it was the first, second, third, or even fourth manuscript that you sent me that I ended up loving. And so it's just such a lesson in persistence and patience, and the right manuscript will find the right house kind of a thing. It doesn't mean that it's not a great manuscript. It's just not right for that particular editor or house. But Suze had a lot of manuscripts in her back pocket and just kept showing me things, and I think it was Brownie Groundhog was our first, right?
No, but you sent me that. I think that Nest.
Oh, right. Of course. That was a very unusual.
And you tried to sell Nest at Dutton and at wherever you landed next.
Sterling? No, you
Yeah, Sterling. And you kept encouraging that little poetry collection along the way.
That's right.
At Sterling, you sent me the little drawing of Brownie that Carmen had.
I remember that. I love that.
I love that. It's such a beautiful
little guy.
Because Meredith knew that I wrote kind of conscripted writing for education stuff. It has to be, I don't know, they would give you a little rubric that was pretty strict, and you had to come up with something creative in that little square. And so she knew I could do that and sent me a little pencil drawing of the groundhog holding a teacup and said, "Can you write a story for this?"
That's right. I totally forgot that's how this started. It was in Carmen Segovia's.
Wow.
It was in Carmen Segovia's portfolio. I fell in love with this little character, and I just thought, Suze, if anybody could do it, you could create a story around this little character. Wow. And I loved your manuscript immediately. And we did two of them. Then we did Wintry Surprise.
Yeah.
I remember seeing those manuscripts when they were in progress, and
me too.
At your place in Portland, and
stunningly beautiful.
The interesting thing was that right as Brownie was going to print, we were at an SCBWI thing, and Abby Simoon was there, and she was showing slides of clients and stuff she thought was interesting. And I think she was not at Tricycle anymore. I think that had closed, and she was going to be at Red Fox. And the little pencil drawing of Brownie popped up on the screen. And I went up to her and I said, "That's my groundhog." And she said, "What do you mean?" And I told her that we were just coming out with a book that you had me write a story for the picture. And she said, "Oh my God, I never thought of doing that." And she said, "Love Carmen's art, and her writing just we couldn't make it work."
Right,
and I thought,
right.
Yeah.
And of course we went to Carmen.
In a really nice way, because Abby is dear. But it was so funny to see it. And I thought, oh, a lot, Meredith's not the only one who saw that little groundhog and thought, wow, what can we do with this?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Way to follow the vision, Meredith. What an inspiring
it's a
story.
delight. Yeah. Not every author, I think, can sort of write to assignment. That's probably a very difficult thing to do, I would think. But I knew that Suze had that background and would be willing to give it a shot. And we always talk at the beginning, this might not work out at all. This might be a waste of your time, but let's try. You never know what might happen. And in that case, it worked out.
3 or 4 maybe that were clunkers, but it was always nice to get that angle on a challenge, and that just rearranges your thinking when you are doing something that way. And it's almost like writing from a prompt. You think of it as being so constrained, but it's just like writing from a prompt.
Yeah, I love that. I remember I had an editor at HarperCollins years ago who gave me a couple things like that. And one of them, then there was a book that came out like not long after that was like almost the same. So we didn't do anything with that one, but yeah, I think it's fun. And in some ways it's helpful because, when your brain is just going all over the place, It's like it gives you a boundary to play inside of. And so that's kind of nice sometimes.
The other thing that was great about that Brownie Groundhog project was that Carmen was also really new to the industry, and it Meredith and the art directors there gave me a lot more input on the art piece and how it should flow. And I remember there was a big zigzag of them running around they were ice skating, but they were going in every direction from page to page. And I said, this really has to just keep going that way. And stuff that I had learned from sitting in the illustrator session for years and years and years. It was so much fun to finally be able to put that in motion and have some input on that. It was great. It was really fun.
Has that not been your experience, Suze, necessarily with other books?
A lot of times things are pretty locked in. I think that it's been a little bit, but off and on, it just depends. And it depends on what stage you get to see stuff in and how, and then what your suggestion might be. There was one spread in my new book, Where's My Cow, that I thought, really? But it's fine. It's just not, I just thought I had a different idea about it. But then I did realize that there was not a whole, you just have cows and egrets flying, one in the sky, one on the ground. There's just not a lot of juice there for illustration. So it was, I thought that he actually, he probably felt really frustrated. And Scott Brenda did a brilliant job, but I'm sure he was thinking, oh my God, how is this gonna come together?
Yeah, I doubt it. I think he had a ball with it. He did such a great job.
Always helpful to see those, see the sketches ahead of time and get those.
But you're never really invited to comment.
It depends. I mean, I feel like at Abrams in particular, we do want the input because there are certainly things that I can miss. And even if we have a copy editor looking and an art director looking, the more eyeballs, the better. And of course, you may have a suggestion that we don't necessarily agree with, or the illustrator doesn't think fits with their vision. And then you just take it into consideration and move on. But we always want that input.
Yeah, I guess I had more input maybe because, well, mostly it was working with Michael Stearns. And I remember like the sketches from Dino Sailors at the end where they get to the train. Initially it was sort of like this bullet looking kind of train, bullet train kind of thing. And I had just went home to Minnesota. My sister looked at that and said, well, Deb, you got to have them change that train or you're not going to be able to do a sequel. I was like, she's not a writer. I mean, well, she's a grant writer, but I was like, oh. So that was where, having some input really helped. But yeah. Have you run into that, Laurie?
Yeah. And I think it really varies. It varies pretty widely. I think for nonfiction, I get asked probably more often than fiction does for, just fact checking the illustrations, which I really appreciate. But I've also had the situation where here's the final art, hope you love it.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, I really hope everything is correct in there because there's no chance to change it at this point. So yeah, I think it really varies. I love being able to give input. The project that I'm working on now, I'm being able to give a lot of input, and that's really fun. It's turned into kind of a collaborative process where, the illustrator will do something and I'll see it and it'll be like, oh, can I change the words to fit, and the editor, luckily, I think is loving the process because I could see it getting really annoying because we keep on but it keeps getting better and better. And it's really fun to be able to have that collaboration. It's so interesting to see. Suze, you mentioned the thing of being able to look at it from the illustrator's point of view. I have one that right now, after turning in this manuscript that I loved and the editor loved, and we're all like, oh, this is wonderful. We realized that almost everything takes place in a hole in the dark.
Yeah.
It's like
Gonna be rough.
illustrator have a great time, you know.
No, and I think it's easy
About
to
baby
not think of
raccoons,
that.
and these baby raccoons are in the den for nearly the whole book, and so it's like, yeah, good luck drawing raccoons in a hole in the dark. I don't know what he's gonna do, but I can't wait to see it.
It sounds like a creative challenge.
Yeah.
I think too that having been able to meet the editor when we were all able to meet Meredith at Silver Falls and then follow up and create a friendship and some level of trust that's just different from sending manuscript off. And it makes a difference if you've met the editor and feel like you can step in a little bit than if you when that's your link, then to not have that connection.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the best things about conferences too, is
Yeah.
that we get to come and show authors and illustrators that we're just people, and I think the intimidation factor probably goes down a lot after that. And you do want to feel that you can express your vision and have ideas about the sketches, or if changes have been made to your text that you're not happy with, you have to be able to speak up and feel comfortable with your editor to make those comments. So yeah, it's one of the great things about conferences. I miss them a lot. It's just not the same doing a Zoom conference, being able to interact with people, sit at a lunch table together. Yeah, looking forward to having that again.
Well, and making those connections can change your life completely. Meredith's been amazing.
You can tell.
Mine. And I had asked her advice about agents over lunch, and she offered to put a call in. She said, I'd be happy to call if you want me to. I hadn't applied to any of them yet. And I was sort of feeling her out to see which she thought was a good fit. And she said, I'd be happy to call Marie Lamba if you want me to. And I said, oh, that'd be great. And the call beat me downtown. I got on the subway at Times Square, and by the time I got to Fulton Street, I had an email from Marie.
Oh,
Wow.
That's great. She was so responsive. Yeah. It just seemed to me that the two of you would hit it off and be a good match.
Yeah. My brother, this is so random, but my brother was the curator at the museum across the street from her house where she walks her dog every day.
Wow. That's an unusual connection.
That really is. I don't think we can trust that close of a connection, but that's amazing.
Well, now that you've brought up, go ahead, Deb.
No, I was just thinking about this whole concept of connection is what we keep coming back to here.
Yeah.
Even before we started recording today.
And also Meredith tossed my name into the hat to do the Cleopatra book. And that led to the Hamilton book and the Biles book. So, yeah.
Right. And our most recent collaboration, I just wanted to show this one. So this is our most recent little project together, was Comparatives.
That's so cute.
How cute
this is
that?
If you can see these are the also availables down there, the previous titles we worked on the series. So it started with hip opposites with hippos. Rhinoceros rhymes with rhinoceros, and homophones with llamas. And I came into Abrams and I just loved this series and I really wanted to do a new one. I could not think of any ideas. I just was completely dry. And so Susan and I had been out for lunch. I think we were at lunch and I mentioned it to you, right, Suze? And I said, I can't think of a thing. Like, there are thousands of animals in the world, and why can't I think of some way to put a piece of grammar together with an animal and make a book? And I posed it to Marie Lamba, and she got in touch with you. And I think your very first email to me had the idea from comparatives. You just thought of it right away. So it's comparative adjectives with parrots.
I love it.
So great.
Yeah, it turned out great, but that's the kind of thing where you don't know. I could have pitched it to her and she could have said, meh, I don't know, that's not my cup of tea,
Yeah.
but lucked out.
Yeah, no, that was fun.
Yeah.
And that was
but
one where she and I
Suze.
were completely in the background. You know, our names are not on that book anywhere.
We were just,
We
noodling around.
noodling around, coming up with something for this French illustrator who's not a writer.
12 Days
Wow.
of Christmas,
Hmm.
and that was really fun. And that was with Carolyn Conahan was the
yeah.
illustrator. So she and I actually did not collaborate. We lived across the river from each other, but we didn't collaborate too much during the process. And it was, but we did build in the, there was a kid Rudy used to babysit for this family. And every time a book came out, he'd say, am I in the book?
Oh.
And I'd say, no. And he'd say, is it dedicated to me? And I'd say, no. And so I put him as the star of the book and dedicated it to their family and gave Carolyn all the Christmas cards I had over years so she could put the whole family in the book. And we put
Oh,
sisters and brother in the letters, and it was hilarious and just blew the kid away.
He must have been so happy. I
It
forgot
was
about that
He
entirely.
was like about
So
14
fun.
by the time I finally got him a book, but I did it.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing.
So
Yeah.
Suze, have you ever had a direct collaboration with an illustrator, or have you always been kept separate the way we usually do?
Always kept separate.
Mhm. Yeah, people think that's so odd. And for me, that's the way it goes. And you don't want to taint
yeah.
the vision of one or the other. You really want the visions to be separate and for the creativity to be complete and not have an illustrator trying to please an author or too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Well,
it's an
I think
unusual
I'm
thing.
really, really, really lucky because the very first thing about explanation of this that I ever heard, what my first lecture about children's books was about this. And I had been at the Reading Association meeting. I was supposed to be spying on phonics programs, and I got really bored with that. So I went and listened to Linda Zuckerman and Marla Frazee talk about Seven Silly Eaters, and I couldn't believe it. And how autonomous the illustration piece, especially back in those days. And that's, so I just got schooled. So I said, oh, that's how it works, and never questioned it ever.
Mhm.
Mhm. Wow. Yeah, people are always surprised, like, and you say, well, I mean, authors and illustrators even rarely meet,
Right.
much less collaborate, but, not always the case after you're around for a while, but
Yeah.
or how
I
are
went out with Mary De Palma. We went out at the New York conference after Rembrandt's Hat came out, and we figured we had to sell like 17 books to pay for our drinks.
Yeah.
well, and a lot of beginner writers are surprised that you don't illustrate it yourself, or surprised that you don't get to choose the illustrator or work with them closely. So you've really illustrated that very well. That is not the case.
Mhm.
And I think
also
for the
if you
betterment
do
of the
your
book,
homework-
right?
If you do your homework and you know how it's supposed to go together, you write really tight so that there isn't a lot of ambiguity in how it's going to, how the page turns are going to go and how it's going to fall. It'll be pretty close if you pay attention.
And often what will happen is once the illustrations are in sketch form, you realize that some of the text doesn't need to be there anymore.
Mhm.
The art has done 50% of the lifting as it's supposed to. And, some of the text can be trimmed away, making for a tighter read. So,
And sometimes, you've heard stories about, I'm trying to think, I can't even come up with a title now, but the ones where little by little they take out the words until it ends up being a wordless book. But, but the author still gets credit, story by.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And sometimes you see where the illustrator will almost introduce a new storyline, like parallel to the text.
I love that.
I do too. I love seeing what they bring to it and how they elevate an idea into something really new and really special. It's so much fun.
Suze, you are so artistic, which some people may not know too. I mean, her little sketches and things, I would nudge her that way.
Thank you. Little stick people, I'm perfect at.
Hey, stick figures have feelings too.
Yeah. Gorgeous little art pieces.
Well, now you have to send us some, Sue, so we can see it.
Alrighty. I'll think about it. That would be fun. But I just so admire the talent out of the illustrators. It's just absolutely unbelievable.
Yeah.
And it's an honor to have them envision what you've come up with. It's
You haven't had too much trouble, Sue, sort of letting go, and like if you had a particular vision for what the character was supposed to look like in your mind, have you ever had trouble letting go of that?
I always thought that Rembrandt's hat, that his hat was red, and I was so surprised that it was a little blue hat and a little blue but that, not really, because I think, first of all, it takes so dang long. You kind of have forgotten what you thought was going to happen by the time you get there. And it just, I think, I opened the first page to of Where's My Cow, and that beautiful tropical palette, and I just thought, oh my God, nailed it. And really, really happy for the illustrator that he could find that richness in there, and really, really honored to collaborate that way.
I wish I had thought to have my copy of that out.
I know, in a way.
Get downstairs and get Where's My Cow to show the cover.
Yeah, you should.
Well, should I?
Speaking of covers or books not matching what you expected from the illustration, this was supposed to be a little boy. It's my son's birth story.
That is a good example. Touche.
So here's Where's My Cow.
Ooh, isn't it beautiful? Can you show us your favorite illustration in it?
Because it's opening it up to the first.
Yeah.
Yeah, the colors, right?
Oh my gosh, that's gorgeous.
Yeah.
It really is beautiful. And my favorite picture is this one where the little egret is sleeping.
Yeah.
Next.
So cute.
So good. And like you said, it's hard to make a cow and an egret in a field interesting visually, and it's so nailed.
And that was inspired by our trip to Maui.
It was.
Nice. Nice.
Great.
The connections continue.
They do.
This has been such a great conversation, and it just such a rich depth of how it all connects. It's been so powerful. Can we offer you, actually all of you, a lightning round question? One last question. Are you ready? Surprise coming from left field, so any of you can answer it first. And that is, if you could tell, right. The pressure's on, Suze. You better watch or I'll make you first. What if you could tell the you that began this process of becoming the experienced, successful, creative, and writers, authors that you both all are, well, you know what I mean. What would you say to that person that first began this journey? What one tip would you give them?
I would get an MFA. I would have married a doctor with a 401k. And I would have gotten an agent earlier, I think. But I was always writing, and I think I helped a lot of little kids learn how to read, and that was just fine with me. But for my own projects, I just never could wrangle the time that they deserved to get a little more continuity to that, but still plugging away.
So glad you are. Deb, do you have an answer?
I think that if it's your passion, just go for that challenge. And sometimes when things happen, to actually question what is happening, because often I think people give up when it's really something about the industry, things that aren't in your control, and to just keep going with the things that are in your control. Just keep doing your part of it.
Well said.
Yeah, that's good advice. Meredith?
I think for me, I would have told myself not to worry about trends and, let the whole trends and what's popular and what do people want to read right now, and just really focus, as I have in my this part of my career, and just what is classic, what will last a long time, what will you want to read to your grandchildren, years and years from now, what will have staying power. So I think that's what I would say, that chasing trends tends not to be something that makes me happy, and I think doesn't have the lasting power.
I love
Nice.
that parallels, I think, what came to my mind, which was to trust yourself. That, yes, you need to learn the rules, you need to understand how everything works, but if there's something out there that you feel really strongly about, you've got to go after it, even if it doesn't seem like it fits, even if people are telling you that there isn't a space for this. By the time you get the thing finished, there may well be a space for that, right? Like trust yourself and follow your calling.
Thank you, ladies. What a great conversation. It almost feels like we are around a campfire or having tea, sharing tea together. This has been fantastic. Thank you for sharing your time with us.
I love making these connections.
Yeah, it's so great.
Thank you so much.
Good to see your faces again.
Good to see yours too. Thank you so much for including me.
Let's do it
Cheers,
again
everyone.
soon in person. I say
Yes,
we do this
please.
as soon as possible in person. Take care.